Kate Morrison stood at the massive window of New Geneva Station, watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from here, but Kate knew better. Humanity had fought hard to reach the stars, and now someone wanted to take it all away. The message had arrived 3 hours ago. The Galactic Council wanted to see her immediately. In 30 years as Earth's top diplomat, Kate had never received such an urgent summons. Something was very wrong. She walked through the station's long corridors toward the meeting room. New Geneva was humanity's pride, a giant space station that housed 50,000 people. It orbited Earth like a metal moon, covered in lights and communication arrays that reached across the galaxy. From here, humans talked to their colonies on distant worlds and tried to keep peace with alien neighbors. Kate entered the diplomatic hall, a huge room with curved walls and floating screens. 12 alien representatives sat around a glowing table, each one different from the others. She had met most of them before, but today they looked cold and distant. High Counselor HFY of the Zephyrians floated at the head of the table. His people looked like tall, thin ghosts made of silver light. They could read minds and bend metal with their thoughts. Beside him sat General Corthex of the Korthak, a creature that looked like a walking tank covered in black armor. His red eyes glowed as he watched Kate enter. "Ambassador Morrison," HFY said, his voice echoing inside her head rather than her ears. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Kate took her seat at the table. The chair felt cold beneath her. Around the room, the other alien species watched her with expressions she could not read. The Vrex delegation clicked their insect mandibles together. The Althari representatives, tall blue humanoids with 4 arms, kept all their eyes focused on her. "You asked to see me," Kate said, keeping her voice steady. "What can I do for you?" HFY's form shimmered slightly. When Zephyrians did that, it usually meant they were upset or angry. "We need to discuss humanity's recent activities." Kate felt her stomach tighten. "What activities?" General Corthex leaned forward, his armor plates grinding together. "Your expansion, your military buildup, your disregard for proper procedures." "I'm not sure what you mean," Kate replied carefully. "Humanity has followed all council regulations. We've reported every new colony, every ship we've built." "That is precisely the problem," said Counselor Aldrich of the Althari, speaking through a translation device that made his voice sound mechanical. "You build too much, too fast. You take too many worlds." Kate looked around the table. Every alien face showed the same cold disapproval. "We've colonized 47 systems in 200 years. That's well within council guidelines. Guidelines created when your species was contained to one world," HFY said. "Things have changed. Humanity has become too powerful, too unpredictable." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. She had spent her entire career building relationships with these species, working to show them that humans could be trusted partners. Now they spoke of her people like a disease that needed to be cured. "What exactly are you saying?" she asked. "General." Corthex stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across the table. "The Galactic Council has made a decision. Humanity will limit its expansion immediately. You will colonize no new worlds beyond your current 47 systems." Kate's hands clenched under the table. "And if we refuse?" "You will not refuse," HFY said, his mental voice growing colder. "Because there are other requirements." A holographic display appeared above the table, showing star charts and ship counts. Kate recognized the data immediately. It was a complete military analysis of human space. "Your fleet will be reduced to no more than 200 vessels, General," Corthex continued. "All military installations beyond your core systems will be dismantled. All research into advanced weapons will cease." Kate stared at the display in shock. Humanity had over 3,000 ships spread across their territory. Most were exploration vessels and cargo haulers, but many were warships built to protect the colonies from pirates and hostile aliens. 200 ships could barely patrol their current space, let alone defend it. "That's impossible," she said. "We have colonies to protect, trade routes to patrol. That brings us to the final requirement, Aldrich said. All human activities beyond your home system will be subject to Council oversight. We will station observers on your worlds to ensure compliance. The room fell silent. Kate felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. They weren't just asking for limits on expansion. They were demanding humanity's complete surrender. You want us to become your subjects, she said quietly. We want you to become responsible members of galactic society, HFY replied. Humanity is young and reckless. You need guidance. Kate stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Every alien eye in the room followed her movement. How long do we have to consider this? 30 standard days, General Korthek said. After that, the Council will take corrective action. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Kate had seen what Council corrective action looked like. Entire civilizations reduced to ash when they refused to obey. Worlds stripped of their technology and left to survive on their own. I will convey your message to my government, Kate said, her voice barely above a whisper. See that you do, HFY said, and Ambassador Morrison, make sure your leaders understand the consequences of defiance. The Council has maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not allow one species to threaten that peace. Kate walked out of the room on unsteady legs. Behind her, she could hear the aliens talking in their various languages, probably discussing how quickly humanity would fold under pressure. They had done this before to other species. Young civilizations that grew too fast were always brought to heel. But as Kate made her way back to the communication center, her shock began to transform into something else. Anger, determination. Humanity had clawed its way out of a dying Earth and built something beautiful among the stars. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. She thought about the colonies she had visited. New California with its vast farms feeding dozens of worlds. The asteroid miners who worked in the cold void to extract resources for humanity's expansion. The children born on distant planets who had never seen Earth but still called themselves human. The Council expected humanity to surrender without a fight. They thought humans were just another young species that could be bullied into submission. Kate keyed in the communication codes for Earth and began composing her message to President Clark. They were about to learn how wrong they were. President Ryan Clark stood in the Oval Office, staring at the wall screen that showed Kate Morrison's face. The ambassador looked tired and worried, but her voice remained steady as she finished her report about the Council's demands. They want us to become their pets, Ryan said after Kate had finished, completely dependent on their permission for everything. That's exactly what they want, sir, Kate replied from her station high above Earth. I've seen this pattern before with other species. The Council waits until a civilization becomes strong enough to be a threat, then they break them down. Admiral Lisa Grant sat in a chair beside the president's desk. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. How much time do we have? 29 days now, Kate said. But I don't think they expect us to use all of it. Most species surrender within a week when faced with these demands. Ryan walked to the window and looked out at the gardens. His grandfather had fought in the resource wars when Earth was dying, and humanity had almost destroyed itself fighting over the last clean water and fertile soil. His father had been part of the generation that built the first colony ships and carried human life to the stars. Lisa, what's our current military strength? He asked. Admiral Grant opened a tablet and scrolled through numbers. 3,200 vessels across all classes. About 800 are actual warships. The rest are transports, explorers, and cargo haulers. We have defensive installations on 31 worlds and major mining operations in 16 systems. Against how many Council ships? Unknown exactly, but intelligence estimates put their combined fleet at over 50,000 vessels. They've been building for 3,000 years. Ryan turned back to face the screen. Kate, do you think they're bluffing? The ambassador shook, her head slowly. I've studied every species that refused Council demands in the past 2 centuries. None of them exist anymore. The Kelthari were reduced to Stone Age technology. The Novan Empire was completely wiped out. The Council doesn't make empty threats. Then we need to prepare for war, Admiral Grant said quietly. Ryan sat down heavily in his chair. The weight of 8 billion human lives on Earth, plus another 40 million spread across the colonies, pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. Issue a general recall. All deep space vessels return to human territory immediately. All colony governors are to begin emergency preparations. Sir. Kate said from the screen, "Are you sure about this? The Council has never been defeated in battle." "Neither had we," Ryan replied, "until we learned how to win." Admiral Grant stood up and straightened her uniform. "I'll start the recall immediately. And sir, I think we should consider bringing Dr. Foster into this. She knows more about alien, biology, and psychology than anyone else in human space. Do it. And Lisa, I want to address all the colonies personally. Set up a quantum broadcast for tonight." 6 hours later, Ryan stood in the White House broadcast room, facing cameras that would carry his words instantly across hundreds of light years to every human settlement in the galaxy. The quantum communication network was humanity's greatest achievement, allowing real-time conversation across interstellar distances. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say. "Today we face a choice that will define our species for generations to come. The Galactic Council has demanded our surrender. They want us to give up our colonies, destroy our ships, and submit to their control." He paused, letting the words sink in across 47 star systems. "I know many of you remember the stories your grandparents told about Earth before we reached the stars. The poisoned oceans, the dead forests, the wars that almost ended our species. We survived those dark times because we refused to give up hope. We built ships and sailed into the unknown because we believed humanity deserved a future among the stars." On New California, Governor Maria Santos watched the broadcast with her cabinet. The agricultural world produced food for 12 other colonies and housed 3 million people. She had spent 20 years building irrigation systems and crop fields on what had once been a barren planet. "We will not surrender what we have built," Maria said to her advisors. "New California will contribute every ship and every resource we can spare." In the asteroid belt of the Proxima system, Director Paul Johnson floated in the control room of Mining Station 7. Around him, 40,000 workers extracted rare metals and minerals that kept human civilization running. The miners were tough people who spent their lives in the cold vacuum of space, and they had no patience for alien threats. "Tell the president we're with him," Paul said to his communication officer. "Every cargo hauler we have can be converted to carry weapons. And our mining lasers weren't designed for war, but they'll cut through alien hull plates just fine." Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Foster worked in her laboratory, analyzing decades of data about Council species. She had spent her career studying alien biology, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Now that knowledge would be used for war instead of peace. "The Korthak are heavily armored, but their joints are vulnerable," she dictated to her assistant. "Their reflexes are much slower than human standard. The Zephyrians have powerful mental abilities, but their physical forms are fragile. Disrupting their concentration breaks their focus." She pulled up files on all 12 Council species, noting weaknesses that could be exploited. Most of them have never faced an enemy that adapts as quickly as humans do. They're used to fighting species that use the same tactics for centuries. Captain Jake Sullivan received the recall order while his ship, the exploration vessel Terra's Might, was mapping a nebula 300 light-years from Earth. His crew of 50 scientists and technicians had been studying stellar formation when the message arrived. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We're returning to Earth immediately, and when we get there, some of you science types are going to learn how to operate weapon systems." His chief scientist, Dr. Amy Chen, looked up from her stellar analysis. "Captain, are we really going to fight the entire Galactic Council?" Jake looked at the star charts showing human space, a tiny cluster of lights surrounded by thousands of alien worlds. "Amy, my great-grandfather fought in the water wars when humanity was dying. My grandfather helped build the first colony ship. My father served in the Proxima Defense Fleet. Every generation of humans has had to fight for survival. This is just our turn." Across human space, the response was the same. Colony governors called up their defense forces. Merchant captains volunteered their ships for military service. Miners and farmers and factory workers began producing weapons and supplies for a war nobody thought they could win. But as President Clark had said in his broadcast, humanity had learned something in their long climb to the stars. They had learned that being outnumbered didn't matter if you were willing to fight harder than your enemy. They had learned that technology meant nothing without the will to use it. Most importantly, they had learned that freedom was worth any price. The Galactic Council expected humanity to surrender like every other species before them. Instead, they were about to face something they had never encountered in 3,000 years of dominance. They were about to face a species that would rather die fighting than live as slaves. 28 days remained until the ultimatum expired. Humanity intended to use every one of them to prepare for the fight of their lives. The alarm bells rang across New Plymouth Colony as massive shapes appeared in the dark space beyond the planet's 3 moons. Commander Nicole Wright stood on the bridge of her destroyer, Eagle's Flight, watching the sensor displays with growing amazement. She had never seen so many ships in one place. "Count them again," she told her sensor operator, Lieutenant Dan Morris. 1,000 confirmed contacts, Commander. Maybe more hiding behind the big ones. I've never seen anything like this. Nicole stared at the tactical display. The Galactic Council had brought the largest fleet in recorded history to intimidate one small human colony. New Plymouth was home to 3 million people who grew food and manufactured goods for nearby systems. It was hardly a military target. "They're trying to scare us," she said quietly. "Show the colonists what happens to people who disobey the Council." Her communications officer, Ensign Kelly Brooks, looked up from her station. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien ship. Put it on screen." The main viewer flickered and showed the bridge of a massive Zephyrian vessel. High Counselor Vexthai appeared as a shimmering silver form, his mental voice reaching into every human mind on the planet below. "People of New Plymouth," he said, his words echoing with power. "Behold the might of the Galactic Council. 1,000 ships representing 12 species and 3,000 years of civilization. Your government has 5 days remaining to accept our terms. This fleet is here to ensure you understand the consequences of defiance." Nicole felt her hands shake slightly as she looked at the enemy formation. The Council ships were huge, some of them larger than New Plymouth's capital city. Energy readings showed weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been broken. Any one of those vessels could destroy her little destroyer without effort. But as she watched the alien fleet arrange itself in a perfect formation, Nicole remembered something her grandfather had told her about the old wars on Earth. Sometimes the biggest army was not the strongest army. Sometimes being big just made you a better target. "Open a channel to all human ships in the system," she ordered. Lieutenant Brooks worked at her controls. "Channel open, Commander." Nicole looked around her bridge at her crew of 30 young officers. Most of them were barely out of the academy, serving their first tours on a destroyer that was supposed to patrol shipping lanes and chase pirates. None of them had signed up to face the largest alien armada in history. "All human vessels, this is Commander Wright aboard Eagle's Flight. I count 47 ships in our little group. That makes the odds about 21 to 1 against us." Captain Mark Rodriguez of the cruiser Liberty responded first. "We're with you, Nicole. My crew didn't come out here to back down from a fight." One by one, the other ship commanders checked in. Cargo haulers that had been converted to carry missiles. Mining ships with industrial lasers that could cut through asteroid rock. Even a few passenger liners whose captains refused to run away when their people needed them. Nicole opened another channel, this one directed at the Galactic Council fleet. "Council ships, this is Commander Nicole Wright of the Terran Defense. Fleet, you are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response came quickly. General Cortex appeared on her screen, his massive armored form filling the viewer. His red eyes glowed with what might have been amusement. "Little human," he said in his grinding voice. "You have 47 ships. We have 1,000. Do you truly wish to fight us?" Nicole stood up from her command chair. Behind her, she could feel her crew watching. waiting to see what their young commander would do when faced with impossible odds. She thought about New Plymouth below, where children played in parks her own people had built. She thought about the colonies across human space, all depending on Earth and people like her to keep them safe. "General," she said clearly, "you have 1,000 ships, but we have something you don't understand. We have humans." Cortex leaned forward, his armor plates grinding together. "What does that mean?" "It means we don't surrender," Nicole replied. "Ever." She cut the channel and turned to her crew. "All stations, prepare for battle. Weapons online, shields at maximum. Send word to the planet below to take shelter." On the surface of New Plymouth, Governor Tom Harris watched the sky through his office window. The alien ships were visible now as bright dots against the stars, like a constellation of death hanging over his world. His aide, Janet Mills, brought him reports from across the colony. "All civilian shelters are full," she said. "The defense grid is online, though it won't do much against a fleet that size." Tom nodded grimly. New Plymouth had some defensive weapons, mostly to deal with pirates and asteroid impacts. Against the Council Armada, they would be as useful as throwing rocks. "What about our people up there?" he asked, gesturing toward the sky. 47 ships against 1,000. Commander Wright says they're going to fight anyway." Tom felt a surge of pride mixed with terrible sadness. Those young officers knew they were going to die, but they would not abandon their duty. It was the most human thing he could imagine. In space above the colony, the two fleets faced each other across the darkness. The Council formation was perfect, a textbook display of overwhelming force designed to break enemy morale before the first shot was fired. Every alien commander had studied the tactics that had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. But as they watched the small human fleet, something unexpected happened. Instead of requesting surrender terms or trying to negotiate, the human ships began to move, not away from the aliens, but toward them. Admiral Cortex felt a flicker of unease as he watched the tactical display. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never seen such a thing. 47 tiny ships were charging straight at his massive armada, like insects attacking a giant. "Are they insane?" asked Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian fleet. "Perhaps," Cortex replied. "But insanity can be dangerous. All ships prepare for battle. We will destroy them quickly and end this foolishness." But as the human ships closed the distance, their formation began to change in ways that defied everything the Council knew about space warfare. Instead of maintaining neat lines, the human vessels scattered in seemingly random directions. Some dove below the alien formation while others climbed above it. A few accelerated straight ahead while others seemed to slow down. "What are they doing?" demanded Counselor Aldrich from his command ship. General Cortex studied the tactical display with growing confusion. In all his years of warfare, enemy fleets had always behaved predictably. They formed battle lines, exchanged fire at long range, and eventually one side retreated or was destroyed. But these humans were doing something completely different. "I don't know," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter. Begin the attack." The Council ships opened fire with weapons that could shatter moons. Beams of pure energy and missiles the size of buildings reached across space toward the approaching human fleet. The aliens expected to see the tiny enemy ships vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The human vessels began to dance. Commander Wright's destroyer rolled and twisted through the incoming fire like a leaf in a hurricane. Her pilot, Lieutenant Sam Garcia, threw the ship through maneuvers that should have torn it apart. But somehow the Eagle's flight held together. Around them, the other human ships performed similar miracles of navigation, weaving between energy beams and dodging missiles with impossible skill. "Return fire," Nicole ordered. What happened next shocked every alien commander in the Council. Fleet. The human ships unleashed weapons unlike anything they had ever seen. Instead of energy beams, the humans fired solid projectiles that moved at incredible speed. Instead of guided missiles, they launched clouds of smaller warheads that spread out like deadly flowers. The railgun rounds punched through alien shields as if they weren't there. The fusion missiles burned through armor that had protected Council ships for centuries. Most shocking of all, the human weapons seemed to know exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. General Cortex watched in growing horror as his supposedly invincible fleet began to take casualties. These weren't supposed to be warriors. They were explorers and colonists, barely 2 centuries removed from their home planet. How could they fight like this? The answer came to him as he watched a human mining ship use its industrial cutting laser to slice through a Vrex cruiser. These people had learned to survive in the harshest environments in the galaxy. They had turned tools into weapons, exploration into warfare, and desperation into strength. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Cortex began to wonder if the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. The battle above New Plymouth became the most important fight in human history. Commander Nicole Wright watched her tactical display as the small human fleet tore through the massive Council armada like wolves hunting cattle. What should have been a quick massacre had turned into something the aliens never expected. "Direct hit on the Korthak flagship," reported Lieutenant Morris from his sensor station. "Their shields are down to 60%. Nicole smiled grimly. The human railguns fired metal slugs at nearly the speed of light, punching through alien energy shields that had been designed to stop slower weapons. Each hit sent shockwaves through the enemy formation as Council commanders realized their defenses were useless. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system from his cruiser Liberty. "Nicole, I'm taking my ship below their formation. These mining lasers work better than I expected." Rodriguez had commanded a deep space mining operation before the war. His ship carried industrial cutting tools designed to slice through asteroids, but they worked just as well on alien hull plates. The Liberty dove beneath a massive Zephyrian dreadnought and opened fire with beams that could cut metal like butter. The alien ship tried to turn and bring its weapons to bear, but human ships moved differently than anything the Council had ever fought. Where alien vessels were large and powerful but slow, human ships were small and fast and unpredictable. They twisted and rolled through space like dancers, always moving, always attacking from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Sam Garcia piloted Eagle's flight through a cloud of enemy missiles, his hands flying over the controls as he threw the destroyer into a spiral that should have killed everyone aboard. Instead, the ship's artificial gravity systems and advanced engineering kept the crew safe while allowing maneuvers that no alien ship could match. "How are you doing that?" gasped Ensign Brooks from her communication station. "Human ships are built different," Sam replied through gritted teeth as he pulled the ship through another impossible turn. "We designed them to survive asteroid fields and solar storms. These alien weapons are just another obstacle to avoid." But the real surprise came from the human weapons themselves. Dr. Foster's intelligence reports had been perfect. The Korthak relied on thick armor and energy shields, but human kinetic weapons ignored both. The Zephyrians used their mental powers to confuse enemy targeting systems, but human artificial intelligence was immune to psychic interference. Captain Ben Rodriguez proved this point when he encountered a group of Vrex ships trying to surround his vessel. The insect-like aliens used swarm tactics, coordinating their attacks through pheromone signals that confused most species. But Rodriguez's tactical computer analyzed their patterns in seconds and predicted their next moves. "All weapons, target the lead ship," he ordered. "Fire on my mark." The Liberty's missiles streaked across space and struck the Vrex commander's vessel just as it tried to dodge. The explosion sent the alien formation into chaos as the surviving ships lost their coordination and scattered in panic. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sam Parker commanded the frigate Defiance in what would become the most famous single-ship action of the war. His small vessel found itself facing 3 Council cruisers at once, odds that should have meant certain death. "Sir, we're outnumbered 3-1, his weapons officer reported. "Then we'll have to be 3 times as good," Sam replied calmly. What followed was 6 minutes of the most intense space combat ever recorded. The Defiance danced between the 3 alien ships using their size against them. When one cruiser fired at the human frigate, Sam positioned his ship so the energy beam struck another Council vessel instead. When missiles locked onto his ship, he led them into the alien formation where they exploded among the enemy fleet. But even human skill and determination had limits. The Defiance took hit after hit, her shields failing, and her hull cracking under the strain. Sam knew his ship was dying, but he also saw an opportunity that might change the entire battle. General Cortex commanded the Council fleet from his massive flagship, a vessel the size of a small city that carried enough firepower to destroy planets. The ship was supposed to be invulnerable, protected by the most advanced shields and armor in the galaxy. Sam Parker looked at that flagship and made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced, over the ship's communication system. "It's been an honor serving with you." The Defiance turned toward the enemy flagship and accelerated to maximum speed. Cortex watched the small human ship approaching and ordered his gunners to destroy it. But Sam's pilot threw the frigate into evasive maneuvers that made hitting it nearly impossible. "What is that human doing?" demanded Counselor Aldrich from his own command ship. The answer came when the Defiance struck the Council flagship's shields at full speed. The impact overloaded both ships' power systems and created a massive explosion that could be seen from the planet's surface. When the light faded, both vessels were gone. The death of their supreme commander sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. For 3,000 years, the Council had ruled through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. "The flagship is destroyed," reported Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian fleet, his mental voice filled with disbelief. "General Cortex is dead." Panic began to spread through the Council formation as ship commanders realized they were fighting something beyond their understanding. These humans didn't just resist conquest. They embraced death before surrender, turned mining tools into weapons of war, and fought with a creativity that made their small numbers irrelevant. Commander Wright seized the moment of confusion to press her attack. "All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels, don't give them time to reorganize." The remaining human vessels struck like lightning, targeting the alien ships that were trying to take control of the scattered fleet. Every Council commander who tried to rally his forces found himself facing human weapons that seemed to anticipate his every move. Captain Rodriguez used his mining lasers to cripple a Althari command cruiser, cutting through its communication arrays and leaving it blind and helpless. Lieutenant Garcia piloted Eagle's flight through the enemy formation, drawing fire away from damaged human ships while his railguns punched holes in alien hulls. But it was the collective action of the entire human fleet that truly broke the Council's will to fight. 47 small ships, most of them converted civilian vessels, had stood against the largest armada in galactic history, and not only survived, but won. Admiral Veltar, now the senior Council commander after Cortex's death, stared at his tactical display in horror. His 1,000-ship armada was in ruins. Hundreds of vessels had been destroyed or crippled by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to damage a single Council ship. "All units, withdraw," he ordered, his mental voice shaking with shock. "Fall back to the outer system." The surviving Council ships began a desperate retreat, abandoning their dead and wounded in their haste to escape the impossible human fleet. As they fled, Commander Wright opened a communication channel that would carry her words across the galaxy. "This is Commander Nicole Wright of the Terran Defense Fleet," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Tell your Council that humanity does not kneel. Tell them that if they want our worlds, they'll have to fight for every single one. And tell them that humans never forget our friends or forgive our enemies." The message spread through space at the speed of light, carried by the fleeing alien ships to every corner of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, masters of known space for 3 millennia, had been defeated by a handful of human vessels crewed by people who refused to surrender their freedom. On New Plymouth below, Governor Harris watched the alien fleet disappear into the darkness between stars. His people were safe, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Council would return with more ships and greater anger, but they would find humanity ready for them. Word of the victory at New Plymouth would spread to every human colony, every ship, every person who had ever dreamed of walking free among the stars. The galaxy had learned that humans could be beaten, but they could never be broken. The age of Council dominance was ending, and the age of human freedom had begun. The news of the Battle of New Plymouth spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched the recorded footage of 47 human ships destroying the mighty Council armada. What had seemed impossible just days before was now recorded history that no one could deny. President Ryan Clark stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House, watching reports pour in from across known space. Admiral Grant sat beside him, still amazed by what her people had accomplished. "The Vrex homeworld is in panic," reported Intelligence Director Carol Stone. "Their military leaders are demanding answers about how humans defeated their swarm tactics so easily." "What about the Zephyrians?" Ryan asked, complete confusion. "They can't understand how our artificial intelligence systems resisted their mental attacks. Some of their philosophers are claiming humans must have no soul since their minds work so differently." Ryan almost smiled at that. Humans had been called soulless before, usually by people who wanted to justify treating them badly. Any word from the Council itself? Radio silence from their capital world. But our deep space monitors are picking up massive fleet movements. They're pulling ships from across their territory. Admiral Grant looked up from her reports. "Sir, we estimate they're assembling at least 10,000 vessels. That's 5 times larger than the fleet we just defeated." Ryan felt the weight of command pressing down on him again. The victory at New Plymouth had bought them time and respect. But it had also made the Council desperate. A desperate enemy with overwhelming force was the most dangerous kind. "What's our status?" he asked. "Every ship in human space is now armed and ready for combat. The colonies are producing weapons and supplies around the clock, but we still only have about 4,000 vessels total, and most of those are converted civilian ships." Before Ryan could respond, his communication officer interrupted. "Sir, we have an incoming message from Ambassador Morrison. She says it's urgent." Kate's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from New Geneva Station. Behind her, Ryan could see other figures moving around what looked like a diplomatic conference room. "Mr. President," Kate said, "something unexpected is happening. We're receiving contact requests from dozens of species throughout the galaxy. Not Council members, but smaller civilizations that have been under Council control for centuries." "What do they want?" Ryan asked. "They want to talk about freedom, about resistance, about joining with humanity against the Council." Admiral Grant leaned forward. "Is this some kind of trap?" Kate shook her head. "I don't think so. These are species that have been forced to follow Council laws for hundreds or thousands of years. They've seen that the Council can be beaten, and they want to be part of it." The first species to formally request an alliance was the Delcari, a race of small blue-skinned humanoids who had been conquered by the Council 800 years earlier. Their representative, a female named Kira Thel, spoke through a translation device with tears in her large dark eyes. "For 30 generations my people have lived under Council rule," she said. "We gave up our weapons, our ships, our right to explore space. We became farmers and servants to feed the Council's armies. But you have shown us that resistance is possible." Over the following days, more species made contact. The Hirani, tall, plant-like beings who had been forced to abandon their nomadic lifestyle. The Teku, a race of small, furry creatures whose homeworld had been stripped of resources to feed Council industry. The Morathi, fierce warriors who had been reduced to serving as shock troops in Council armies. Each species brought something different to the growing alliance. The Hirani had knowledge of deep space navigation that surpassed even human technology. The Teku were master engineers who could build almost anything from scrap materials. The Morathi understood ground combat better than anyone in the galaxy. Dr. Helen Foster found herself leading the effort to coordinate between all these different species. Her laboratory became a meeting place where beings who had never spoken to each other learned to work together. "The key is not trying to fight like the Council," she explained to a mixed group of human and alien military officers. "They rely on overwhelming force and rigid tactics. We need to use our diversity as a strength." Captain Jake Sullivan, recently promoted to admiral after his return from deep space, nodded in agreement. "Every species thinks differently, fights differently. The Council won't know how to respond when they face tactics from 20 different worlds all at once." The alliance grew stronger every day. Human shipyards worked alongside Delcari engineers to build new types of vessels. Teku mechanics improved human weapons with alien technology. Morathi warriors trained alongside human marines. sharing centuries of combat experience. But the most important change was happening in the hearts and minds of billions of beings across the galaxy. For the first time in thousands of years, people, who had lived under Council rule, began to believe that freedom was possible. On the world of Vecta Prime, a Harani colony that had been forced to grow food for Council armies, Governor Talvarin made a decision that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. He ordered his people to stop all shipments to Council worlds and instead begin feeding the growing resistance fleet. "We have lived as slaves long enough," he announced to his people. "It is time to choose freedom, no matter the cost." Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds as species that had obeyed the Council for centuries suddenly found the courage to resist. Mining operations stopped producing materials for Council shipyards. Agricultural worlds refused to feed Council armies. Even some Council member species began to question their loyalty to the alliance that had kept them in power. The Council itself was fracturing under the pressure. High Counselor Vexthai of the Zephyrians called for immediate military action to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. But Counselor Aldrix of the Althuri argued for negotiation, fearing that more warfare would only create more enemies. "The humans have created something we never anticipated," Aldrich said. During an emergency council session, "They have made resistance contagious. Every species that joins them makes others braver. Every victory they achieve proves that we are not invincible." But Vexithai would not hear of compromise. "We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not bow to a species that crawled out of one small world just 2 centuries ago." The debate raged for days while the human-led alliance grew stronger. New shipyards were built in hidden systems. Advanced weapons were shared between species that had been enemies for millennia. Most importantly, a network of communication and supply routes was established that could survive even if individual worlds were conquered. President Clark stood once again before the cameras that would carry his words across human space and beyond. But this time, his audience included billions of beings from dozens of species, all united in their desire for freedom. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council demanded our surrender, he said. They expected us to bow down and accept their rule like every other species before us. Instead, we chose to fight. We chose to show the galaxy that freedom is worth any sacrifice. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, humanity is no longer alone. We stand with the Delkari, the Harani, the Teku, the Marathi, and dozens of other species who have chosen liberty over security. Together, we are building something the galaxy has never seen before. Not an empire built on conquest, but an alliance built on choice. On worlds throughout the galaxy, beings who had never dared to hope watched the human president speak about a future where they could choose their own destiny. In hidden bases and secret meeting rooms, resistance leaders made plans that would have seemed impossible just months before. The Galactic Council still commanded vast fleets and held control over most of known space. But their authority was cracking like ice in spring, and everyone could see the cracks spreading. Commander Nicole Wright, now Admiral Wright after her promotion following the victory at New Plymouth, stood on the bridge of her new flagship watching the Alliance fleet assemble. Ships from 20 different species floated in perfect formation, their crews working together despite centuries of separation and mistrust. "It's beautiful," said her executive officer, Captain Dan Morris. Nicole nodded, thinking about Lieutenant Sam Parker and all the others who had died to make this moment possible. He would have loved to see this. All those young officers who sacrificed everything at New Plymouth. They didn't just save one colony. They saved the idea that people can choose to be free. The war was far from over. The Council would return with overwhelming force, determined to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. But they would find something they had never faced before in 3,000 years of dominance. They would find an enemy that grew stronger with every attack, more united with every defeat, more determined with every loss. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of freedom had begun.